Did it just do it super quick? Way better than expected, I guess. More and more of us are vibe coding, but of course, the more that we're doing this, the more that we're running into agents doing some pretty weird stuff despite all of our efforts to keep them on track. And that means that if you're familiar with using things like your Copilot instructions or having a custom agent, you're giving all the guidance and the instructions and all the information up front to hopefully give your agent the right things to go do, but you've still probably encountered where it goes a little bit off the rails. So the more that I've been working with this kind of stuff, the more that I'm trying to see what kind of other guardrails I can put in place. So in this video, we're going to walk through some analyzers, or at least go over the concept of leveraging analyzers in our C# applications, so that we can try to make sure that we're keeping agents on track. What we're going to do is jump over to Visual Studio. On my screen, I have a badge repository inside of BrandGhost, which is an application that I'm building. This is following a repository pattern. The details of like the queries and all of that, not really important. But what I wanted to talk about is that it's a common practice that I have in my entire code base to have everything wrapped in a tracer call when I'm dealing with the database. Now, why am I doing this? Well, that's because I want to make sure that I have some data in terms of how long queries are taking. Yes, there's lots of different ways that we can do this, but this is a pattern that I have in the code base. Now, with that said, I do have things like in my agent instructions, like, hey, Copilot or hey, agent, whatever, go make sure that when you're doing a repository pattern, you are using a tracer wrapped around the database call. The other thing that I have in my instructions is to follow similar patterns. I basically also put this into every prompt to have the agent follow similar patterns. And my custom agent that I have, where essentially just took one of the example agents from Awesome Agents GitHub repository, tweaked it a little bit, and I try to make sure that I have these patterns like this tracer wrapping that you see right here on line 20, basically it's wrapped around the entire body of this method. I suggest to the agent to do this. Now, with that said, I might go spin up a new repository or have an agent working through some new feature, and lo and behold, it does not actually do that. The reality is that when I'm not wrapping something in a tracer call, the code is still valid. It still compiles, it still functions, it still does what it might need to do. And if the agent is, writing tests and stuff for this new feature, it will still work and everything is okay. But what ends up happening is that if I'm not paying close attention to this stuff, it ends up being something later where I go, oh crap, that wasn't caught, right? If I could check it in a code review, that's great. There's all of these opportunities where I can catch it, but the reality is I'm a human and the agent is only an agent. This is just one very simple example of something like an agent going off on a different path. If we take this idea, and this is just a tracer call wrapping a, database query, this kind of thing, we can extrapolate that to all sorts of different coding patterns. What I've been doing is getting a little bit sick and tired and fed up of people saying, hey, just skill issue in your prompt, right? Get better. I'm like, look, I understand. I understand that I can keep getting better, and I understand that agents and models will keep getting better. But the reality is, at some point, I feel like I'm dumping so much context and instruction for the agent to go follow every single possible pattern that it starts to feel just unrealistic. So I said, hold on, there's got to be a better way to do this, and certainly I'm not the person to invent this, right? But we have analyzers in .NET. Now, up until this point, I've been saying to myself, I want to use Roslyn analyzers, I want to use code generation, I want to start making videos showing this kind of stuff, but I haven't yet gone and experimented myself with it. This has been the first time where I've started leveraging this kind of stuff. And if you have a quick look over in my Solution Explorer, I have a Nexus AI Analyzers project here. I have a whole bunch of different analyzers that we've added in. And these are just patterns that I'm starting to add in to our Analyzers project because I'm doing these code reviews with agents going, oh crap, it missed this again. So just a quick look over here, like strongly typed ID analyzer. This is because we had different types of identifiers being put into the code base, and the agent was not marking them as strongly typed IDs. I also want strongly typed IDs excluded from code coverage, so I want that attribute on them. The agent was not following that. So despite there being plenty of examples and instructions, it's just one of those things that it ends up missing. I have some other things for like Needler registration, so my dependency injection framework. What happens is, very expectedly, I suppose, I have agents going to build out functionality and they're going, okay, the typical pattern in .NET is that we want to register things onto the service collection, so I'll make sure to do that. But my dependency injection scanner will go register those things all automatically for us anyway, so I don't actually need it to go write dependency injection code. I have that stuff in my documentation, I have it in my Copilot instructions, it will still go do it. The idea is that I'm starting to leverage analyzers to literally force the agent to correct itself. Now, it's still early in this process for me, so I wanted to make this video to talk about an example. We're going to go through this in this badge repository, but it's still kind of early for me. So I want to show you that hopefully we get Copilot to generate some code that does what I'm expecting it to. I did a quick test before recording this. It seemed to do what I wanted, so I copied the prompt. We're going to try it again, but obviously it might not do the exact same thing. But the reason I say this is still early is because with things like analyzers, the agent is able to do what a human would do. And that's one of the meta points I want you to think about with this video is that what I'm doing with this agent and trying to put analyzers in place or having instructions and all this kind of stuff, what I want you to think about is that forget AI for a moment. If we just had a new developer working in our code base, personally, this is the philosophy that I've always had. I would want people to feel comfortable coming into a code base and writing code. And that means that I'm this is going to sound like a funny saying, I guess, but like I want people to, be forced into the pit of success. They need to fall into it. I want the paved path that they're following to make them do the right thing. And that means that it's harder and harder for them to screw up. It's harder and harder for them to follow the wrong pattern. This is the same thing that I want with my agents. I want them to be able to write code and go, oh crap, that's not the right way, or this is the right pattern to follow, let me go do that, and just have it start doing the right thing more. And when it doesn't do the right thing, what do we do with a human? We remind it, we say, hey, that's not the pattern, this is the pattern, right? I just want this to be more and more automatic. And if you think about that, if you're a human, and if you're watching this, I hope you're a human, if you're a human and you're a developer in a code base, what better way to tell you you're not following the right pattern than as soon as you type it into Visual Studio, it literally tells you, hey man, that's not the right thing. This is the right thing instead. And we can get that kind of functionality with analyzers. What I'm going to do is we're going to add in a update badge definition method. I'm going to start writing it because I want to show you one more thing that's not a custom analyzer, and I will make another video on this if you're interested. Just let me know in the comments if you want to see some more stuff like this. Again, it's not going to be groundbreaking. I'm just trying to show you that these are things that we could start trying to do more of in terms of guiding agents, okay? So first thing, public async. That's not what I want, Copilot. I'm always curious when I start typing, is Copilot just going to know what I want? Sometimes it does a really good job. Other times, there's certainly not enough context right now. So public async, we're going to do, it's a task, and I wanted to do update badge definition async, and will Copilot do it now? Cool, it does some stuff. I'm going to just do this for a moment. Forget the Copilot part there, but see how already I have red squigglies in the IDE. Some people might say, oh, this is annoying, but I just want to show you that this is not a custom analyzer. This is just from my global config and editor config settings. It says remove unused parameter badge ID if it's not part of the shipped public API. So I have a rule turned on. This is IDE 0060. I have it turned on to basically be an error. If I'm not using a parameter, I want the IDE or MS build to tell me, hey, look, no one's using that. You should not have that included. And I'm turning more and more of these things on to basically start to enforce better patterns. And this might seem like a silly one, and I know we're not talking about the custom analyzer yet, but just to give you a super quick example, I was recently refactoring some code in a test file, and this was a test file that Copilot had written for me, and I noticed that a parameter was passed into a method that it was using for asserting data, and it wasn't even using the parameter. Should I have caught this in a code review? Yes. of course. But this is the thing, when we start having more and more code being generated by agents, there's more and more opportunity for us to miss this kind of thing, right? We're reading more files, we're reviewing more files. I want more things to start enforcing this. So this is one such rule that I have in global config and editor config to make sure that this kind of thing gets caught. But what I'm going to do is basically have Copilot build this API out for us. And what I want to see if it will do properly is that it needs to have this tracer call. If I were to go write this myself, and it would look something along the lines of like using var connection. Okay, thanks, Copilot. So I have my DB connection factory. I'm not an entity framework core user. I prefer having my SQL queries in the code. That's why I was saying don't pay too much attention to the details of this, because if you're an entity framework user, that's totally cool. You do you. I like having my queries here. But if I were to have this connection and I wanted to have a Dapper call, so connection, and then I want to say like execute async. Let's see if Copilot will do something. Lovely. Now, let's put in a wait in front too. See how there's a red squiggly over this as well. This is now using the custom analyzer I have, and it says database operation execute async must be wrapped in a tracer with tracing call. Okay, so this is one of the first examples where this is a custom analyzer. This code is technically correct, but it needs to have what you see up here, this tracer call wrapping it. Okay, so I'm going to have Copilot go build this method for us, and like I said, hopefully it does the right thing. But the idea is that it should give us something like this. Again, I'm not paying too much mind to the actual query or the syntax or whatever. You know, I don't care right at this moment if, like, you know, the query was something like this and it was just the wrong thing. I want to see that it's following some of my rules, and hopefully we get it to do that. Okay, so let's get rid of that. I'm going to pop open the chat. I'm just going to be using GPT-5 for this. I have the query, okay, I still kept it on my clipboard. Excellent. So I'm just saying add an update badge definition async. I should have said method to the badge repository. It should allow callers to update a badge definition using Dapper. Now, is this prompt amazing? Not really, right? Do I want it to go write tests? Do I want it to follow the other patterns in here? The answer is like, usually, yes, I would. I do want it to follow other patterns in here. Usually I would want it to write tests. I'm not so interested in the tests right now because I just want to show you that hopefully it will go add the tracer in. And if it doesn't, hopefully when it tries to build this, it will have a build error and then it will put the tracer in. It might just get it right the first time and it won't even try to build, and essentially we got lucky and it didn't even need to rely on the analyzer, but we'll see as we press run on this. Okay, so at this point it is going and adding the call into here. If I have a quick scroll through, it did already add the tracer in here, so that's good news. Did it just do it super quick? Okay, better. Way better than expected, I guess. I was kind of hoping to see that it would do maybe something kind of silly, but it like just got it perfectly the first time. So awesome. But let's add that in, right? So it has caching in here as well. I didn't even tell it about caching. I have Fusion Cache that I'm using in my repository. But just to give you a quick preview of this, right? If I got rid of, let's just take this out for a second, right? We'll take the tracer call away. So if it would have written code like this, if it would have, and it clearly didn't, but if it would have, you can see that it's saying down here that the tracer call needs to be wrapping this Dapper method. This is a safeguard that we have, and if it tried to build, it would see that it has this error. But like I said, we got kind of lucky this time that it just did it right the first time, which is excellent. So there's kind of multiple layers to this, right? If we can have the instructions up front, I didn't tell it that in the prompt, but if I have my Copilot instructions set up properly, if I have my custom agent running and it has instructions in there as well, and they say things like wrap it in the tracer call, these are all things along the way that we should be doing to give it better guidance. And then failing that at some point, right? Because if there's enough patterns or the context is kind of going off the rails because it's doing a lot of work, if we forgot to explicitly say, hey, you better wrap this thing in a tracer call, we have this safeguard at the end when it's trying to build, and it will say, you can't even compile, man. You're missing this thing here. And like I said at the beginning of this, having a tracer call wrapping a database method, you don't need that for the code to be, correct or for it to compile or for it to do the right thing. But this is a pattern that I have in my code base that I want to enforce, along with a bunch of these other ones that I have in my analyzers project. So just wanted to give you a quick example of that. And the other thing that I just wanted to kind of leave you with to be thinking about is that I also mentioned that I use Fusion Cache in my repository, right? So I didn't tell it to go add this caching, this removal of the cache, right? At the bottom, it's not adding it to the cache either, but it's at least doing an invalidation. I didn't tell it to do that anywhere, right? If we pop open this prompt again, just says add this method in here. All right, so either from the Copilot instructions, because I do have some information like that, or saw the documentation, although I didn't see it actually saying anything about that in here, right, which is kind of interesting. So it didn't say that it was reading documentation or whatever else. I'm assuming that what it was able to do is see the other relevant patterns in this file because it's using that as the context. Again, if I go back here, it's using the active document. So my assumption right now is that it was using the existing patterns in here. Maybe that includes the tracer as well, and that's why I got it right away. But if I want to enforce that there is caching happening, or that we're invalidating the cache, or if I add a new method, it needs to play nicely with the caching patterns. What I should do is have that in my Copilot instructions. I should have that in my custom agent, if that's a pattern I want to keep enforcing. But one of the things that I am experimenting with now, and what this video is all about, is maybe I should have a custom Roslyn analyzer that will go look for this type of thing and say, hey, look, you have a database method call in here, in a repository pattern with other caching, and you are not doing anything with the cache. Probably you need to have some invalidation or updating of the cache in your method as well. So that's something I want you to think about. Could we go write a custom analyzer for this? What would it look like? So I'm not going to go through the details of how to implement this analyzer. That will be a future video. I personally want to make sure that I am more experienced with building custom analyzers, because I'll let you in on a little secret. Every single analyzer that you see in my project here was coded by Copilot. I said, here's patterns that I want you to use, and I want you to write an analyzer. I want you to write tests for that. And then I pulled down the code because I was using this in GitHub Copilot. I ran it, and then I played around and tried to see, like, if I structure the code this way, will the analyzer pick it up? I went back and forth and vibe coded all of these analyzers. So they're probably not perfect. They can probably be improved, and I will continue to improve them. But in future videos, I will go through how we can make analyzers. We can vibe code some analyzers. I'll show you how I did that. And I just wanted to leave you with that thought. So this is how I'm starting to guide more of my agents with a little bit more structure. And I hope that that gives you some insight into how you can start guiding your agents a little bit better than just, skill issue, bro, get better at prompting. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.